Greetings. It is a cloudy morning here in southeast Georgia. It feels a little cool, but I think it's just because the sun isn't already beating down already. It felt pretty nice when I went on my little warm-up run this morning before working out. So hopefully it stays kind of cool today, but we'll see what happens. I know at the tail end of last week and kind of more just developed over the weekend, the new jobs numbers for this month were kind of low, and then the revised numbers over the last 2 months went down. So that really helped with speculators on the stock market and their optimism, along with the new round of tariffs that are getting implemented, fully announced last Friday, and will be trickling in here over the next week. So that'll be super fun. So yeah, so I think they were just covering that story on NPR. Let's see where they are at it.
So let's turn to a view from Capitol Hill and the Joint Economic Committee. That's a bipartisan panel that includes members of the House and Senate. It serves as an advisory body for Congress and the White House on taxes, labor, and other economic policies. Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota is a member, and she's with us now. Good morning, Senator. Thanks for joining us once again.
Well, thank you. It's great to be on again, Michelle.
So we just heard about the recent disappointing jobs numbers, some troubling outlooks for inflation and for overall economic growth. But federal data also show that tariffs are bringing in a lot of revenue for the government. The Treasury Department indicates these tariffs brought in nearly $30 billion last month. Does that weaken the case against them?
I don't believe it does, because that is a short-term gain. And when you really look at the underpinnings of this economy, which was in fact not just stable but growing when President Trump came into office, what do we see now? We've lost manufacturing jobs every month since Trump.
The Republicans in, he raised taxes.
We just saw the Dow Jones fall by over 500 points. We've seen higher inflation. And while the president's answer may be to fire the well-respected statistician that puts the numbers out, who's supported by his previously appointed statistician, he called her firing long. What he was trying to do there is create an alternative universe. People's grocery receipts don't lie, Michelle. Their rent doesn't lie. Their child care costs don't lie. He has literally taken a jewel of the economy and creating a mess, and most importantly, it's on the backs of regular people.
What are you hearing from your colleagues on the Joint Economic Committee, including Republicans?
Well, not just on the Joint Economic Committee, but throughout the Senate, people behind closed doors, they say they don't like these tariffs if they're Republicans, but yet they still vote to rubber stamp what he's doing time and time again. They get it. They're hearing from their own constituents. Small businesses like the flower shop in Minnesota that's actually been undercut by a foreign competitor who doesn't have to pay the kind of tariffs, retaliatory tariffs, that we see now in America. Or the owner of a small hotel who's not getting Canadians in because they're so pissed off not only about the tariffs that have now gone up to 35%, but also on the 51st state comments, and so they're just not coming to America. In nearly the numbers, 30-40% down. Or a farmer whose market's dried up for soybeans. That's what they are hearing. They know it. They represent a lot of rural states, but yet they did not vote with Tim Kaine and myself, and we led a effort to at least overturn the Canadian tariff, and that is one answer. Congress should just reassert itself, get its power back. The other answer is the courts, Michelle. In that case, they soundly said, no, this is wrong under the law, what the president is doing, and that is now on appeal. The appeal court sided with the original court as well. And the third thing is just the people of America say enough is enough, so we stop this madness.
So let me just hone in on a couple of these things that you just mentioned here. Minnesota is among the states and businesses suing the Trump administration for imposing these tariffs without the approval of Congress. Now you just criticized some of your colleagues from the other side of the aisle, saying that they're just rubber stamping the president's actions. But having said that, is there any zone of agreement between Republicans and Democrats that where Congress might be willing to assert itself? Can you find, is there any?
Well, even on the one I mentioned on the Canada tariffs, we won that. It was maybe a little note, but 4 Republicans joined us, right? 2 who bordered Canada, states that bordered Canada, Senator Collins Murkowski, and 2 who hardly agree on much. Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul, they're from Kentucky, and they agree that they want Kentucky bourbon on the shelves in the liquor stores in Canada.
So
you already seeing this growing concern about these.
I mean, yeah, we've really, we've developed our economy to be, huge consumers of cheap international products and exporters of goods. I mean, yeah, Jim Beam and Jack Daniels does great here in the U.S., I bet, but it has an entire international market that it depends on as well. And without that, those businesses probably not do so well. Can't make Kentucky bourbon in Saskatchewan,
Small businesses are roadkill. Individual families are suffering, and you've just seen the numbers breaking out on unemployment and inflation. He needs to get this under control, and if he won't do it himself, Congress's role, and the Democrats are united on this, is to be a check on him.
Let's talk about some of these economic numbers that
I don't believe that's true. We already saw that with the budget bill in March, I think it was, March or April, where, the House Democrats were completely united. They all voted against it. They ended up, not getting their way because it's a very slim majority for the Republicans, right? But at least they all stood together. And then when it came to the Senate Democrats to filibuster the spending bill, I'm not talking about the reconciliation bill, I'm talking about the continuing resolution, that was written in such a way that it would give the executive further power and strip away funding. The Senate Democrats fell apart when they had a moment of power. They failed to use it because they feared that a government shutdown would be worse than flexing their muscles a little bit and getting Congress to the negotiating table. So I don't believe that Democrats are at all united in fighting Trump or the Republicans.
But so many economists have said one of the most amazing things about America, people trust us, they trust their data worldwide. So he's messing around, he thinks he can just put his person in and create an alternative universe. But yet, having this key person in place that transcends politics is so important, and these numbers don't lie. Americans agree 37% of them only approve of his handling of the economy. So they know that he is messing up and he cannot fire his way out of this economy.
I want to mention that we invited multiple Republican members of the Joint Economic Committee to join us for an interview that either declined or didn't respond. We were able to hear from Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. She's just with us now. Thank you, Senator. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Michelle.
This is NPR News.
In 1974, a group of robbers tunneled under a busy street in Raydio, Georgia, and blasted their way into a bank vault.
I'm going to say the ad for now because I've heard that one 1,000 times. But no, I mean, I'm glad Mr. Klobuchar is, speaking out on this, but there was so much that could have been done previously to fight this. So, I don't know, just the mentioning of our centrist party, the Democrats, being united, it just really ticked me off right there because of people like Chuck Schumer and Fetterman over in Pennsylvania and their ilk. just not actually being united and prioritizing corporate donors over the constituents that they represent. It's just so irritating because they will concede to those people, and they always will. And the only time they won't concede to them is when they get voted out of office. Whether that's a reaction to their ineffectiveness, putting in a person that is even more reactionary, more radical, and more bought into the corporate pocketbooks. More willing to take the checks from the wealthiest of people who already have power because they're seen as an alternative, or from an actual progressive person who wants to see real change to help the American people and help the people of the states and the counties and the constituencies that these ineffective losers represent.
Investing platform that strives to make it easy to be invested. Learn more at betterment.com. Investing involves risk. From the Lemelson Foundation, working to harness the power of invention and innovation to accelerate climate action and improve lives around the world. Learn more at lemelson.org. From Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, a personalized program that bases rates on safe driving habits at progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. And from the William T. Grant Foundation, supporting research to improve the lives of young people. Online at wtgrantfoundation.org.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm
Let's go, Ms.
Good
Martin. Let's go,
morning.
Ms. Halden.
Most of the 62 Democrats in the Texas House of Representatives are not in Texas.
Oh, yeah, this is
They
crazy.
left the state yesterday intentionally to prevent Republicans from getting a quorum in the House. Why? Well, on the planned agenda for today is a Republican proposal for a new congressional map.
President Trump wants the state to make new districts that help Republicans pick up 5 more seats and increase their odds of keeping control of Congress.
Such
Texas
an
Democrats
authoritarian,
from Boston,
dictatorial move.
Chicago. Texas Democrat Trey Martinez Fisher, the vice chair.
If I can't get the votes, find me the votes. It's ridiculous. It's so anti-democratic.
Largest democracy in the world, and yet the Texas governor would bend a knee to Donald Trump because he's afraid to lose an election fair and square.
Also in Chicago, Texas Democratic Caucus Chair Gene Wu, he said Democrats instead wanted to focus on passing relief for victims of the July 4th floods.
Instead, Governor Abbott has used this tragedy, taken these families who are grieving, taken these communities who are struggling to recover, and used them as hostages.
Yeah.
A political game.
On social media, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton called the Democrats cowards and said the state should, quote, hunt down the lawmakers and bring them back to Austin. Rules adopted by Texas Republicans in 2023 allow Democrats to be fined $500 a day, which can't come from campaign funds, and threatened with arrest. And late last night, Governor Greg Abbott issued a new threat that the Democrats who left Texas were abandoning their office and could be removed, with Abbott choosing who will fill those vacancies himself. He also suggested the lawmakers were committing a felony by soliciting funds to pay for the fines.
One of the Texas lawmakers who left the state is on the line with us now. That's Democratic Texas State Representative Tina Hinojosa. She's with us now from Chicago. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just tell us again why you and your colleagues decided to do this.
Well, we don't have the numbers to beat this effort to rig the 26 midterms in favor of 5 extra Republicans in the U.S. Congress because we are the minority party in Texas. But we do have the numbers to stop business in the Florida House. And so with our departure, that business has stopped and the bill cannot pass. I will say in Austin, where I represent, we have 2 seats in Congress. This bill would eliminate the Latino opportunity seat. Similar thing happens in Houston, which is the city with the largest Latino population in all of Texas. Their Latino opportunity seat will be removed. So Trump and Governor Abbott are trying to gain 5 additional Republican seats in Congress on the backs of Latino voters and also African-American voters.
So, to that end, your colleague State Representative Gene Wu accused Governor Abbott of, quote, using an intentionally racist map to steal the voices of millions of Black and Latino Texans, unquote. Do you think that's true? I mean, it's obviously partisan, but what makes it racist?
Right. The proclamation issued by the governor that authorizes the 30-day special session says specifically the reason for redistricting is a letter from the U.S. Department of Justice. Pam Bondi wrote a letter saying that specific districts should be eliminated because they're majority minority districts. So the governor's own proclamation authorizing special session says this is about race by citing the U.S. Department of Justice letter to our governor.
Democrats tried the same maneuver in 2003 to avoid Republican-led redistricting plan. Republicans eventually got the new map they wanted. That you, in 2021, organized that same effort to try to block Republicans from passing new voting restrictions, and that also failed. So what makes you think that this might be successful this time?
Let me clarify that in 2021, when we broke quorum, the bill eventually passed, but we brought such attention, such a national spotlight onto what Texas Republicans were doing that they gutted their own bill. So in that way, we achieved a victory we could not have anticipated. And today, I have learned that lesson that you do what's right for the day, you win for the day, and we don't know what tomorrow will hold. So it's a day-by-day situational fight,
That's politics.
and we'll play to win every day.
Can't the governor just call you back for another special session after this one is scheduled to end?
He does have that power, yes, and at that point, if that happens, we will have to make a decision about what's the best strategy to move forward.
And as you just heard, the governor suggested he was on court process to kick you and other Democrats out of office for leaving the state. He says he can appoint a replacement. And he also suggested lawmakers who are asking for money to pay for fines may be violating bribery law. What's your response to that?
That is disrespectful to Texans, to voters, to who they have selected to represent them. It is along the same lines of what he is trying to do by denying the voice of voters, by this extreme gerrymandering, manipulating districts so as to predetermine the 26 midterms. It is undemocratic. It is anti the foundations of our country, and it is extreme and harmful to our constituents. So we will do everything in our power to fight it.
Before we let you go, this session in the legislature right now was called Focus on Redistricting, but it also is about the July 4th floods. It's about vast returns to residents and other matters. What about those priorities?
Well, the floods definitely should be a priority, but Republicans are not serious about addressing those priorities.
No,
We've had only
they never
2
were.
hearings on the floods that killed over 135 Texans. We had 7 or 8 hearings on districting. So we understood that the agenda was about playing politics, and we didn't want to participate.
Yeah, if they cared about floods, they would have been prepping for this for decades when the science was out, when geologists and really geologists and climatologists were warning, hey, floods are going to get worse, tropical storms are going to get worse, tornadoes are going to get worse. They would have taken the steps ahead of time to improve our infrastructure, replace our infrastructure here in the States. But especially like from the Texas perspective, if they actually cared, they would have gotten ahead of this, and we would have had over 100 people die. We wouldn't have so many kids die because of a flood that, in all honesty, was preventable, but it's only preventable by putting in a decade's worth of infrastructure work. And we're going to leave it there for the radio for the day because the story just ended and it's starting to get that crunchy part that I always talk about since I had to drive kind of farther away from where my radio station is at. But this whole situation is like crazy here in Texas, or not here in Texas, back in Texas. And depending on how it goes, it might be a game plan for a lot of states, on both sides of the political duopoly here in the U.S. But we'll probably be more effective in red states than it is in blue states because the Republican Party is more willing to not play by the rules, even though they can do it if it's within the rules, so it's fair game. While Democrats and liberals in general they're afraid to test boundaries once they're in political office. They want to work by norms, and norms are only effective if everyone follows the norms. And if if not everyone follows the norms, then they're not norms. They're just they're crutches. They're handicaps that you put on yourself for no reason. So it is this could spin out in so many different ways. But I will say this: what the Democratic members of the Texas legislature are doing is something that should be looked at just across the United States. The federal level really needs it, but it's taking an actual stand. It's doing political action that has a political effect, and not just another paragraph in their book tour. Like they are stopping the political process in Austin to prove a point, to bring national attention to an issue that will remove the ability of thousands and millions of Texans to have proper representation in our government. They are shining a spotlight that this special session, which was advertised for a month, really it was advertised for a month, that this special session is for improving flood efforts in the state of Texas, so Kerrville never happens again. No, it's not. Like the state congresswoman just said, it is not about that. It is about redistricting. 7 hearings about redistricting, 2 hearings about the floods. That is a huge difference. There's a huge disparity in attention to the issue, in prioritization to the issues, and it's just crazy. But them, removing quorum, them, just walking out of the state is making a huge political statement. And other people who are supposed to represent our constituencies across the United States, they should look at this as a great political tool. And as the congresswoman said, when they made this move last time in 21, they got a lot of concessions out of a bill that would have removed an enormous amount of voting rights for people. Because the bill, still passed, yes, but it did not pass in the same form that it was originally, originally written. And that is an electoral win. And it is important for us to remember that, we're not always going to get our black and white win. Sometimes we're going to get that gray in the middle, but the gray in the middle is a lot better than, just absolutely losing altogether. If you look at Minnesota, the mayoral candidate in Minneapolis, he's a state rep there, Mr. Fata. He helped push a bill to get more education to working Minnesotans. It wasn't to the full extent that he wanted at first. It probably wouldn't have passed in his legislature, so he had to make a concession. But it helped 40,000 Minnesotans be able to afford higher education. That if he was strong on his bill, he said no, I want the original framework of it, then no Minnesotans would have gotten additional education. That it's going to help them in the job market, going to help them be smarter Minnesotans, smarter Americans. So I will leave it at that for the day. So it looks like the sun is finally coming out, breaking up that fog. So it'll be nice here in the southeast. So, but I hope y'all all had a great weekend. I hope y'all have a good one. I know that I am somewhat excited to start the work week. So we'll see how it goes. But y'all have a good one.